My name is Mark Jensen, one of the co-founders of Land Betterment. I'm really excited to introduce you to a guest we have today, Jessica Davis. She's the Director of Sustainability at IUPUI. It's a great university, really I think they're on the cutting edge of sustainability. And one thing that I think is really exciting to talk about is she is not only teaching sustainability from a major and a minor at the university, but also implementing it at the university itself. And I think it's really interesting to talk about the way that they're approaching it and how they see it from the academia side, as well as looking at it in a legacy business, meaning the university, and then comparing to how were you doing it at the business level and the private enterprise level. And there's so many different ways that it ties together and correlates that there's just a lot to learn here and a lot to be excited about. We're really happy that she was willing to join us today and talk a little bit about it, and we'll leave it to the interview. Thank you so much.
So as Sustainability Director at IUPUI, we have 3 different pillars that we tend to work in: academics, operations, and engagement. And within that engagement pillar is mainly where we're focusing our community support efforts around sustainability. So we have our own internal organizational sustainability goals that have had pretty solid return on investments for us, but also have provided, really sustainability has become a very important tool by which we fulfill the strategic plan. So it's not a distraction to the plan, it's not an extra to the plan, it is a tool by which the plan is fulfilled. And I think that's something that organizations, whether they're businesses, cities, nonprofits, can start having discussions about, if they haven't already, is, you know, how can sustainability be central to moving along your goals? Oftentimes, especially like some older companies may see sustainability as a distraction or an extra or a tack on to what they're already doing, instead of seeing it as something that can drive their central business model and really be an asset. So like when we think about sustainability from the university perspective, we can match up all of our sustainability goals at the university level to the university strategic plan. So that means sustainability is now something that is seen as valuable to the administration, and it also is something that needs investment, because where your strategy is where your time and your money is invested. So making those very deliberate connections between sustainability and the ultimate goals of your organization can be a really big boost to your sustainability efforts, but it also helps us as sustainability professionals think more holistically about how our efforts can really like drive the identity of an organization. So oftentimes I'll tell folks that there's a really big difference between the question of what can sustainability do for my organization and what can my organization do for sustainability. And the second question, what can my organization do for sustainability, is, well, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? Versus the first question, what can sustainability do for my organization, is, okay, how is sustainability helping me get my job done? And those are 2 very different questions, and how you frame those questions can be a make or break in how you invest in sustainability efforts. So one of the kind of great things about newer companies is, and companies that are just re-envisioning themselves, whether regardless of age, is, at least we're seeing on our end, more of a focus being put on those ESG, sustainability, and resilience goals, partly because consumers are starting to demand it. So where there is demand, hopefully it is being met. But also I think some of the biggest companies in the world have figured out that sustainability is going to save them a buck. It's a value proposition. It's a place you can hold in the market, and it's something that can make you distinct from everybody else. And what's cool about that is that you can choose how you're going to be distinct, right? So some organizations might ride really hard on renewable energy, other may be more about responsible investment, some may be more about workforce development. So you can pick and choose the ones that are kind of best for your organization and what your organization stands for, but it gives you something, it gives you a really good story to tell, which I think is what people want. They want stories from the organizations that they support.
One thing you touched on is, I mean, you work for a university, and the idea of that, it's, I mean, talk about legacy and long-standing, and the university's been around for a long time, and they have a way of doing things. And so what I think is really exciting. And one thing you mentioned is asking the question why. We grew up and we operate in a legacy environment as well. And so the idea of trying to change legacy or old standing to more sustainable can be challenging and daunting. And I think from your perspective, a little bit of insight of just getting the buy-in. And I think that's what you're talking about now is the savings and the idea that you're doing better by the world as well. But I think that's really important and something that I think a lot of older, more legacy businesses are scared to make that jump.
Yeah, and even sometimes more so than that is just the values of your organization. So I think every organization has values, whether they are written somewhere, spoken about, on your website, just lived internally. Like, what are those values? And you're always going to be able to find a way to attach sustainability to those values. So your values are going to ultimately inform your strategic plan. Your strategic plan is going to ultimately inform how you invest your time and your money. If you can find sustainability in those, and be able to speak to those values that way, it makes the conversation way easier, because now you're introducing or you're seeding sustainability in a conversation that's already happening. Like, hey, did you know this is one of our values, but look, here's the sustainability angle to that.
Uh-huh.
So like, for example, at IUPUI, like there are 3 different approaches we can take to any sort of sustainability solution when we're putting it together. You can just talk about the financial return, but not all sustainability projects have a financial return, at least one that's easy to calculate because of externalities and other things like that. You can talk about how it aligns with your identity and your mission, and you can also talk about the social benefits of it. So depending on who your decision maker is, some of them care more about one of those 3 things or all 3 of those things, and you can customize your argument to whomever your decision maker is. So if you can understand their values, it makes that conversation a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then one other point, just before we jumped on the video here, you were talking about the idea that you offer as a minor sustainability and how it ties towards the ability to then tie sustainability to all industries. And
Mm-hmm.
relate to it in the collaboration that can happen there. And because you actually teach a sustainability class, which you have students of all majors in it. And so I think that's really interesting. And that's a good way for people to open up and learn about it from that angle as well.
Yeah, one thing we tell our students all the time is that it doesn't matter what your degree is, there's a place at the sustainability table for everyone. And it's our job as a sustainability professionals to get you to the table, right? Not your job to like try to hopefully find your way there. But if you do, obviously you're welcome, but it's our job to get you there. So even like last semester, for the first time ever, I had public safety students, right? Students who are training to go into law enforcement. So how can we talk about how sustainable communities, if the way that they're designed impacts crime and heat island effect, and how that might drive more violent crimes in a city? That's a completely different conversation that we would probably never have had I not had that subset of students in that class. Mm-hmm. So it's a really great entry point for everyone. And hopefully everyone can find something that's interesting to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the one other point that you mentioned is, and something that is kind of dear to our heart is efficiency. Sometimes sustainability is just using less. And what sustainability means to different people is how they implement it. It can mean different things, but it ultimately drive in that same direction. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize they're trying to practice sustainability, even though they are, and how they can continue to implement it even further.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it feels like sustainability has been around for a while, but it's certainly missing in some folks' common vernacular. So I think like making those very pointed connections between, hey, do you know that what you're already doing is actually sustainability? And let's call it that. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
And that makes future conversations easier too.
Well, and it gets them thinking, right? I mean, then that's what the whole objective is, to get people thinking differently and to broaden their horizons, to feel comfortable to continue to move outside of their comfort zone as they start to look at other ideas and other ways of what they do on a daily basis to be more sustainable. And because there's probably 1,000 things that everybody does that you could do probably slightly different or just tweak it a little bit and figure out, why do I do it this way? That you can live a more sustainable lifestyle, which ultimately then when you get to work or when you go do something fun, just little things you can start to do and implement that would be good for your company too.
Exactly. And I think one of the roles of like folks like us in this area is to create a solid vision for what that looks like. Sometimes people get stuck in the day-to-day of what they've already done. And if you can present a compelling vision, like, hey, this is what it could look like, and tell that story, then that can be a really effective mechanism of breaking people out of that rut. So it's good that we have that sort of vision and can hopefully like paint it for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our company, Land Betterment, was created as a sustainable development company, with that sole purpose of being more sustainable and more efficient. And a lot of what we promote is being entrepreneurs and being more entrepreneurial in a legacy environment to help the community be more sustainable. And we're talking about entire cities here. And it's been eye-opening to see that a lot of people haven't looked at it in that way. And the idea that you can actually tie in saving money and being more efficient while also doing things better. I mean, literally little things like don't print on paper. I mean, just like in our world, that's what they all used to do all the time. And it's and you start to guide people like, we don't have printers here because you're not supposed to print anymore and you don't need to. And it's kind of funny to have those conversations with new entrepreneurs, because they're like, well, I got to go buy a printer and I got to go buy a bunch of paper. I'm like, you really don't, not anymore. So it's fun to have those conversations, to learn, to hear about other people. I mean, it'd just be super exciting to maybe even sit on one of your classes to hear the different people talking about it from all the different majors and all that good stuff, and see the younger generations adapting to it.
Well, you're in luck because my class has to be taught online this fall, so
There you go.
you can call in.
No, appreciate your time, Jessica. Maybe where would somebody go to find more information about your programs, and then maybe spend 30 seconds on talking about the conference you have coming up in the fall?
Sure. So the best place to find out information about everything that we do is sustainability.iupui.edu, and that has everything you could ever want there, from strategic plans through individual programs. And one of our programs is the conference. So it's the Indiana Sustainability and Resilience Conference. That's going to be September 2nd. And the focus of that conference, or the theme of that conference, is sustainability as an economic driver. So presenting the business case for sustainability, ideally presenting cases that are easily replicable, that can have a pretty immediate impact on bottom line, while also providing all these extra tangibles of feeling good and community investment and on all these other things that can be a good value proposition for an organization. So we're going to have a handful of tracks talking about all different sectors of sustainability, from workforce development to energy to electrification, to where hopefully folks can find themselves situated in any of those, and hear from others and hopefully make connections about things that they could adopt themselves. So that's September 2nd, and it'll be all day.
That's great.
And you can also find information on our website about that too.
Perfect. Appreciate your time, and we look forward to collaborating in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you.